Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you're watching this video. It's me again, Teacher Kent. And I don't think you know, but I think we're going back to school on November 15. So that means we won't be having any more online classes anymore. So that means I will get to see all of you back at school. Are you excited? I hope you are. But first, let's continue where we left off last time. Let me just open my PowerPoint presentation. Here it is. Last time we talked about the first three water sources, which was the river, the lakes, the swamp. Now we are going to talk about the last remaining three water sources, which are groundwater, glaciers, and permafrost. But before we go to those three left, let's have a quick review about the first three. The river. Oh, let me just move it here. A river is a natural flowing water course, usually fresh water, flowing towards an ocean, sea, lake, or another river. And this is what a river looks like. Usually, class, rivers are relatively safe to drink water or is a relatively safe place to help you get fresh water. Just like what I said last time, a lot of people before, they tried to make homes near rivers because they could get fresh water and they could get fish and other animals that they can eat. And they can also plant near a river since the river is very close to their house. A river, it's like a highway. It's connected to different things. A river is not just born. A river is actually comes from usually a sea, a lake, or even a swamp. Because rivers are naturally flowing, meaning it's always moving. Sometimes it is made from another river. So if you see a river like this, when you want to go to the ocean, you just follow where the river is flowing. You will eventually go to the ocean or to the sea. If you want to know where the river comes from, you go opposite the place where the river is flowing. Next, lakes. Lake is an area filled with water, localized in a basin surrounded by land. And this is what a lake looks like. A lake, it's like a small ocean, class, in the middle of, well, land. Okay, a small ocean in the middle of land. If the ocean, no, normally an ocean or a sea surrounds a small area of land, it's the exact opposite for lake. It's it's a little bit of a sea, but it's surrounded by land. And sometimes, or most of the time, it has rivers connected to it because this is where the water from the rivers comes from. If you're asking me where the water from the lake comes from, it usually comes from the rain or the water underground. Rainwater usually makes a lake. If an area always gets wet by rain, most probably you can get oceans there. You can get water there too. Okay? For example, let's say Supalak School suddenly had a change of climate. There's a lot of water suddenly from rains in Supalak School. Over time, if there's always a lot of rains, Supalak School might become a lake. Okay, that's how lakes are formed. And yes, lakes are just like rivers. in which you can get a lot of water, a lot of clean water. Clean in a sense that you may be able to drink it, but it has a little bit of bacteria, but it's relatively clean. Let's continue. The third one, swamp. A swamp is an area of land permanently saturated or filled with water. Many swamps are even covered by water. So this is an example of a swamp. Okay? It's an area that has a lot of water. But unlike the rivers and the lakes, the swamp has land that has land, and the water is only covering it a little bit. It's not really a full-blown cover, because if it's fully covered in water, a lot of the trees will not be able to grow because the tree needs land. And if the land is, well, very deep, no tree will be able to grow up. So a swamp. And a swamp has a lot of animals living in it because technically there's still land near the swamp. So land means that there are land animals that live near it. For example, a crocodile, an alligator, they lived in a swamp. Especially those, a snake, a toad, they live in a swamp. So if you see a swamp near your house, be careful. There might be alligators or snakes living near it. So we're done with the 3 reviews. Let's now go to the 4th. The 4th one is groundwater. Groundwater is the water found underground in the cracks and spaces in soil, sand, and rock. And this is what groundwater looks like. Ta-da! It's really just the name. It's groundwater. It's water found underneath the ground. Okay? You see the water table, the groundwater, the saturated zone, and the surface water. Some lakes, they are connected to groundwater. That's why they never seem to run out of water. Now, groundwater is relatively clean. It's cleaner compared to the other sources of water. For example, it's much cleaner than lakes or swamps, because lakes and swamps, they might be contaminated. Let's say, for example, humans live near a lake, or animals live near a lake or a swamp. When they go to take away their waste, or they poo or they pee, sometimes they poo or pee in the water, and sometimes that makes the water not clean for you to drink. While groundwater, there's no animals that live underground. It's purely water and maybe some dirt. But the moment you filter out the dirt from groundwater, you will have a steady source of clean water. So usually, even people found out about groundwater, they made a pump. Remember what I showed you in our meeting? There was a big pump there, right? We actually learned how a pump works. They get the pump, they put it on top of land, and they dig very deep until they get to a place where there's a lot of water. And that's where they know there's groundwater. Then the pump will just filter out some soil. If it doesn't filter out some soil, you will be the one to filter it out. But nonetheless, it's a safe source of water. Number 5, glacier. A glacier is a huge mass of ice that moves slowly over land. Like this one. This is an example of a glacier. Now, what do you think a glacier is good for? Or where a glacier is actually good for drinking. If it's just a big ice, class. It's a big lump of ice. You can crack the ice, and when it melts, you can drink the melted water. That's a glacier. Now, the problem here, class, is glaciers, they are usually found in North Pole, in the South Pole, in the edges of the world. And there's a lot of animals that live in glacier, right? So if you want to get the glacier it to drink water, it means a lot of the animals will have no place to call home. Like, for example, polar bears. Polar bears, and not just polar bears, but penguins, sea otters. A lot of animals live in the glaciers. And the sad thing is, because of global warming, you know what is global warming, right? It's when the temperature of the earth is slowly increasing one degree Celsius at a time. It causes some of the glaciers to melt. That means that the glacier, who is fresh water, will mix with the sea, which is salt water. So we can't drink salt water, remember? All because of global warming. So we will lose like a big chunk of the clean water because of global warming. Not only that, but global warming also makes you like global warming also helps you lose a lot of a lot of animals. A lot of animals will become extinct due to global warming. That is the sad part about glaciers. Now let's continue. The last type of free like water supply or clean water areas comes from permafrost. Permafrost is grounds that continuously remains below 0 degrees Celsius for 2 or more years, located on land or under the ocean. This is an example of a permafrost. Now, we cannot see permafrost in Thailand because Thailand is always hot. We always joke that Thailand has 3 seasons: hot, hotter, and hottest, right? So because Thailand is hot, there is no permafrost in Thailand. Permafrost are found in places that are really cold, like Ireland, Switzerland, the New Zealand, Norway, the places where there's a lot of snow. The snow, sometimes in those places, the snowy period is so long that it makes the area very, very full of ice. And after a long time, slowly but surely, some plants will grow on top of the ice. And because the plants grow on top of the ice, it will then block the sun from hitting permafrost. So it will make the ice underneath the plants basically hard to melt. That's why it's called permafrost. It's like permanently frozen. It can be located on land, but it can also be located under the ocean, especially at the bottom of the ocean. Because at the bottom of the ocean, there's a lot of places that the sun doesn't reach. So it doesn't make the bottom of the ocean any hotter. So it will not melt. But under the ocean, the water is still not, it's seawater. So technically, permafrost under the ocean is not clean water, or you cannot drink it. But permafrost above the ocean, like on the ground, it's clean because no animal can survive in pure ice. So if we cut that permafrost, we can get clean water. So that's it. Those are the 6 types of clean areas. Now, let's review it together. What are the 6 sources of clean water? The first is the river. The second is the lakes. The third is the swamp. The fourth is the ground water. The fifth, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's the glacier. And finally, the sixth, it's the permafrost. So that is it for today. We will continue our discussion this coming Thursday. And hopefully, I will see you in school next week. Goodbye, class. See you later.